Princess Diana was on the verge of a complete breakdown when Whitney Houston whispered 6 words that changed everything. Your voice matters more than theirs. But what happened in that private moment between two of the world's most famous women would shake the foundations of the British royal family forever. If you're enjoying this incredible story of friendship and empowerment, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment about a time when someone helped you find your voice. It was November 1993, and Diana was at her lowest point. The separation from Prince Charles had been announced. The tell-all biography, Diana, Her True Story, had exposed the painful reality of her marriage, and the palace was doing everything possible to control the narrative. Diana felt like a prisoner in her own life, suffocating under the weight of royal protocol and public scrutiny. That's when fate intervened in the most unexpected way. Whitney Houston was in London for a private charity gala at the Dorchester Hotel. She wasn't supposed to perform that night. She was simply there as an honored guest, supporting children's charities close to her heart. But what Whitney didn't know was that Princess Diana would be in attendance, desperate for any escape from the relentless pressure of her crumbling royal life. The two women had never met, but they'd been watching each other from afar for years. Whitney admired Diana's humanitarian work and authentic connection with people who were suffering. Diana, meanwhile, had been secretly listening to Whitney's music during her darkest moments, finding solace in songs like Greatest Love of All and I Have Nothing. The gala was typical royal fare, stiff, formal, and carefully choreographed. Diana moved through the evening like a graceful ghost, smiling at the right moments, making polite conversation, but her eyes betrayed the emptiness she felt inside. She was going through the motions of being the people's princess while slowly dying inside. Whitney noticed immediately. "That woman is drowning," Whitney whispered to her assistant, Sarah Johnson, as she watched Diana across the room. "Look at her eyes. I know that look." Sarah was confused. "But she's Princess Diana. She has everything." "Honey," Whitney said softly, "I've had everything too. And sometimes that's when you have nothing at all." But the moment that changed everything was yet to come. As the evening wound down, Diana excused herself to the powder room, needing just 5 minutes away from the suffocating crowd. She stood at the mirror, gripping the marble counter, trying to hold herself together. The reflection staring back at her looked perfect. Flawless makeup, elegant dress, royal composure. But inside she was screaming. That's when Whitney walked in. "Your Royal Highness?" Whitney said gently, but Diana could hear something different in her voice, not the usual deference or formal respect. Just one woman recognizing another woman in pain. "Please," Diana said quietly, her voice barely audible. "Just Diana, please." Whitney stepped closer, and for a moment, two of the most famous women in the world stood in complete silence. Then Whitney did something no one had done in years. She really looked at Diana, not at the princess, not at the royal figure, but at the woman. "How long since you've been able to just breathe?" Whitney asked. Diana's carefully constructed composure cracked. "I don't remember," she whispered, and tears began to fall. What happened next would haunt the royal establishment for years to come. Whitney Houston, without any regard for protocol or propriety, took Princess Diana in her arms and let her cry. For 10 minutes in a hotel bathroom, the people's princess was finally allowed to be human. "I feel like I'm disappearing," Diana sobbed. "Like I'm becoming this thing, this symbol, and the real me is just gone." Whitney held her tighter. "Baby, I know exactly what you mean, but listen to me carefully. Your voice matters more than theirs. Your truth matters more than their perfect picture." Those 6 words, "your voice matters more than theirs," hit Diana like lightning. For the first time in years, someone was telling her that her feelings, her truth, her authentic self was more important than the royal image. You won't believe what Whitney proposed next. "I want to see you again," Whitney said as they prepared to leave the bathroom. Not as Whitney Houston meeting Princess Diana. As two women who understand what it's like to live in a fishbowl. Diana looked terrified. "I can't. The palace, they control everything. Every meeting, every friendship, it all has to be approved." Whitney smiled, and Diana saw a flash of the rebellious spirit that had made Whitney a global superstar. "Honey, I didn't ask what the palace wants. I asked what you want." Over the next 3 weeks, something unprecedented happened. Whitney and Diana began a secret friendship that would shake the very foundations of royal protocol. They spoke on the phone late at night, when Diana could escape to her private apartments at Kensington Palace, and Whitney could call from her hotel rooms during her European tour. Their conversations were unlike anything Diana had ever experienced. Whitney didn't want to discuss charity work or royal duties. She wanted to know how Diana was feeling, what she dreamed about, who she really was beneath the crown. "Tell me about when you were little," Whitney would say. "Before all this royal stuff, what made you laugh?" Diana found herself remembering a girl she thought was lost forever. A girl who loved to dance, who wanted to be a kindergarten teacher, who dreamed of a simple life filled with love and children's laughter. "I used to sneak into the kitchen at night and dance with the radio on low," Diana confessed during one late-night call. "I'd pretend I was performing for thousands of people who loved me for who I was, not what I represented." "So why did you stop dancing?" Whitney asked. The question hung in the air because Diana didn't have an answer. When had she stopped? When had she allowed the palace to convince her that her joy, her spontaneity, her authentic self was something to be managed and controlled? But the palace was watching, and they were growing concerned. By December 1993, royal security had noticed the unusual phone calls. Princess Diana was spending hours on private conversations with someone they couldn't identify. When they discovered it was Whitney Houston, panic set in at the highest levels of the royal establishment. "This friendship is unacceptable," Sir Robert Fellows, the Queen's private secretary, told Diana during a tense meeting in his Buckingham Palace office. "Ms. Houston is an American entertainer with no understanding of royal protocol or discretion. This association must end immediately." Diana felt the familiar suffocation creeping back in. "She's my friend, the first real friend I've had in years." "You are not a private citizen, Your Royal Highness. Your friendships affect the monarchy. Ms. Houston's influence on you has been noted, and it's concerning." What they meant was that Diana was changing. She was speaking up more in meetings, questioning decisions, showing glimpses of the independent spirit that terrified the establishment. Whitney's influence was making Diana remember who she used to be before the palace molded her into their perfect princess. That night, Diana called Whitney in tears. "They want me to stop talking to you. They say you're a bad influence." Whitney's laughter was warm and knowing. "Baby, if helping you remember your own strength makes me a bad influence, then I'll wear that badge with pride." "But I'm scared," Diana admitted. "What if they're right? What if I'm being selfish?" That's when Whitney said something that changed Diana's life forever. "Diana, listen to me very carefully. There's a difference between being selfish and being authentic. Selfish is demanding the world revolve around you. Authentic is refusing to let the world erase you." Whitney paused, and Diana could hear music playing softly in the background. "I want to teach you something," Whitney continued. "Something that saved my life when I felt like I was disappearing, too." "What?" Diana whispered. "How to find your voice. Your real voice. Not the one they've trained you to use, but the one that comes from your soul." What Whitney proposed was unprecedented. She wanted to give Diana private voice lessons, not to teach her to sing, but to teach her to speak her truth with power and conviction. "Every time you speak from someone else's script, you lose a piece of yourself," Whitney explained. "But when you speak from your heart, with your authentic voice, you become unstoppable." The lessons began in secret. During Whitney's extended stay in London, she would slip away from her hotel and meet Diana at a private location away from the palace. There, in a small rehearsal studio owned by one of Whitney's trusted friends, two of the world's most famous women worked together on something revolutionary, helping Diana find her authentic voice. But this wasn't about singing, it was about speaking truth. "Stand up straight," Whitney would instruct. "Feel your feet on the ground. Now speak from your core, not from your throat. Tell me one true thing about how you feel." At first, Diana could barely whisper. Years of royal training had taught her to speak in measured tones, to never let emotion show, to always maintain perfect composure. Her natural voice had been buried under layers of protocol and expectation. "I'm angry," Diana finally said during their third session, and her voice shook with the admission. "Louder," Whitney urged. "The walls can handle it." I'm angry, Diana said, stronger this time. About what? About everything. About being treated like a doll instead of a person. About having my feelings managed and my truth manipulated. About losing myself to their perfect image. By the end of that session, Diana was crying again. But these weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief. For the first time in years, she had spoken her truth out loud, and the world hadn't ended. The most powerful moment was yet to come. Their secret meetings continued for weeks. Whitney taught Diana breathing exercises to center herself before difficult conversations. She showed her how to project her voice with confidence, how to speak slowly and deliberately when she felt overwhelmed, how to use pauses for power instead of filling silence with nervous chatter. But most importantly, Whitney helped Diana remember that her story belonged to her. They want to write your narrative for you, Whitney said during one particularly intense session. But baby, you're the author of your own life. Start writing your own story. The transformation in Diana was remarkable. Palace staff noticed that she was asking more questions during briefings, speaking up when she disagreed with decisions, and showing a confidence they hadn't seen since the early days of her marriage. The Queen's private secretary was alarmed. Her Royal Highness is becoming difficult, he reported. She's questioning protocols that have been in place for centuries. What they didn't understand was that Diana wasn't becoming difficult. She was becoming authentic. Whitney's friendship had reminded her that she was more than just a royal figure. She was a woman with her own thoughts, feelings, and values. The palace decided to take action. In January 1994, Diana received a formal directive. All contact with Whitney Houston must cease immediately. The friendship was deemed incompatible with royal duties and potentially damaging to the monarchy's reputation. When Diana called Whitney to deliver the devastating news, her voice was stronger than it had been in years, even as she cried. They're forcing me to choose, Diana said, between you and my position. What do you want to choose? Whitney asked gently. I want to choose both. I want to be a good mother to William and Harry, fulfill my royal duties, but also be myself. Why does it have to be all or nothing? Whitney was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that would echo in Diana's mind for the rest of her life. Sometimes, baby, the most rebellious thing you can do is simply refuse to disappear. Wait until you hear what happened next. Diana made a decision that shocked everyone. Instead of meekly accepting the palace's directive, she requested a meeting with the Queen herself. For the first time in her royal life, she was going to speak her truth directly to the most powerful person in the monarchy. The meeting took place on a cold February morning in 1994. Diana walked into the Queen's private study with her shoulders back and her voice prepared. She had practiced with Whitney's techniques until they felt natural. Your Majesty, Diana began, her voice clear and steady, I need to discuss the directive regarding my friendship with Whitney Houston. The Queen, surprised by Diana's directness, gestured for her to sit. I understand the palace's concerns about protocol, Diana continued, but I must respectfully ask that my personal friendships not be dictated by royal policy. Whitney Houston has been a source of strength during an extremely difficult period in my life. She has helped me remember who I am beyond my title. The Queen studied Diana carefully. Something had changed in her daughter-in-law. There was a strength there that hadn't existed before. And you believe this friendship is worth challenging centuries of royal protocol? The Queen asked. Diana took a deep breath, drawing on every lesson Whitney had taught her about speaking from her core. Your Majesty, I believe that authentic relationships make me a better representative of the monarchy, not a worse one. When I am supported as a human being, I can better serve as a royal figure. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then, to Diana's amazement, she spoke. You may continue your friendship, but with discretion. Diana had won the first real victory of her adult life, but the most incredible part of this story was yet to be revealed. The friendship between Whitney and Diana continued, but it evolved. They both understood that their bond was about more than just personal support. It had become a symbol of authenticity in a world that demanded performance. Whitney taught Diana to use her voice not just in private, but in public. During Diana's famous 1995 Panorama interview with Martin Bashir, many people noticed something different about her. She spoke with a conviction and authenticity that was unprecedented for a royal figure. There were three of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded, Diana said in that interview, referring to Charles and Camilla. The line became iconic not just for its content, but for the way Diana delivered it, with quiet strength and unwavering truth. Whitney watched that interview from her hotel room in Los Angeles and cried with pride. "That's my girl," she whispered to the television screen. "That's her real voice." After the interview aired, Whitney called Diana immediately. "How do you feel?" Whitney asked. "Terrified and free at the same time," Diana answered. "But for the first time in my life, I told my truth in my own voice." The palace was in crisis mode. Diana's interview had shocked the world and changed the conversation about the royal marriage forever. But Diana felt lighter than she had in years. Their friendship continued until Diana's tragic death in 1997. Whitney was devastated by the loss, but she honored Diana's memory by continuing to speak about the importance of authentic voice and the courage to live truthfully. "Diana taught me something too," Whitney said in a rare interview about their friendship. "She taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about speaking your truth even when you're terrified of the consequences." The impact of their friendship extended far beyond their personal bond. Diana's transformation influenced a generation of women who watched her evolution from silent suffering to authentic strength. The princess who had once felt voiceless became an advocate for landmine victims, AIDS patients, and other marginalized groups. She used the voice that Whitney had helped her find to speak for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Whitney, meanwhile, was inspired by Diana's courage to be more open about her own struggles. Watching Diana fight for authenticity in the face of enormous pressure helped Whitney understand that vulnerability could be a form of strength. In 1999, 2 years after Diana's death, Whitney established the Diana Spencer Foundation for Authentic Living, dedicated to helping women find their voices and live truthfully despite external pressures. "Diana showed me that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply refuse to be silenced," Whitney said at the foundation's launch. Her voice continues to inspire women around the world to speak their truth. The foundation has helped thousands of women over the years: abuse survivors, young mothers, women in high-pressure careers, all learning the same lesson that Whitney taught Diana. Your voice matters more than their expectations. Today, the rehearsal studio, where Whitney and Diana met for their voice lessons, has been transformed into a memorial garden. A plaque reads, "In memory of two women who refused to disappear, Princess Diana and Whitney Houston. Their authentic voices changed the world." But perhaps the most powerful legacy of their friendship was the lesson it taught about the courage required to live authentically. Prince William has spoken publicly about how his mother's transformation in her final years influenced his own approach to royal life. "My mother found her voice," he said in a 2017 interview. "She taught me that being royal doesn't mean being fake." Prince Harry, too, has credited his mother's example with giving him the courage to speak openly about mental health and his own struggles with royal life. "She showed me that vulnerability and strength aren't opposites," he said. "They're the same thing." Whitney's family has preserved all the letters Diana sent to Whitney over the years. In one dated just months before her death, Diana wrote, "You gave me the greatest gift anyone can give another person, the permission to be myself. I will spend the rest of my life using the voice you helped me find to help others find theirs." The friendship between Whitney Houston and Princess Diana lasted only a few years, but its impact continues to ripple through generations. Two women from completely different worlds, one from Newark, New Jersey, one from British nobility, found in each other the courage to live authentically in a world that demanded performance. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone is simply see them as they truly are, not as the world expects them to be. Whitney Houston gave Princess Diana her voice back. Diana gave Whitney a deeper understanding of courage. Together, they proved that authentic friendship can survive any protocol, overcome any pressure, and inspire change that lasts long after we're gone. Every time a woman finds the courage to speak her truth, every time someone chooses authenticity over expectation, every time a voice that was silenced learns to sing again. That's the legacy of Whitney Houston and Princess Diana. Their friendship teaches us that your voice matters more than their rules. Your truth matters more than their comfort. Your authentic self matters more than their perfect image. And sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you to help you remember who you really are. If this incredible story of friendship and finding your authentic voice inspired you, make sure to subscribe for more untold stories about the connections that change history. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power, and let us know in the comments about a time when someone helped you find your voice. Don't forget to hit that notification bell for more amazing stories about the courage to live authentically.